Live. So, transition. Hello, welcome to Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
And today we're going to talk about Young Justice Season 2. But before we do that, buddy, why don't you tell folks at home what it is we do on this podcast?
On this podcast, we talk about superhero shit. We don't
Yeah.
talk about games anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, next week's going to be Suicide Squad, and the next week is going to be a movie about video games, which I guess
That's
is
true.
close.
That one's like barely related to video games. So on this podcast we talk about games, but we also like to dip our toes into like all the cool nerd shit. And one of the cool nerd shit things that I have always pitched for the podcast is that we do a big watch of Young Justice, and we've finally gotten around to it. The time before last time, we did a Young Justice season 1
That was
review, and now
actually
we are talking about season 2.
that
Oh
was
wait, was
actually
it?
2 times before last time because we did Inside and Black Widow. Um, in
Holy shit.
between. Yeah, and then there was the off week, so where I
Yeah,
was sick.
wow.
So a month later, we're on Young
Yeah, a
Justice.
month later, we're following up. Yeah, so Young Justice season 2, subtitled Young Justice Invasion, takes place 5 years after the original season of Young Justice, where Robin has matured into Nightwing. The sort of mechanics of the team have been ironed out. It's less fly by the seat of your pants and a much more sort of efficient strike force of the Justice League, who are working diligently to combat the forces of the Light, uncover a conspiracy regarding aliens, and maybe that's all I can say without like being spoilers. But so yeah, that's where Young Justice season 2 comes in.
Yeah, okay. We should put a spoiler warning early. Want to give our pre spoiler impressions. It's your baby, buddy. You go first.
I love this. I do think it is tough to say whether or not season 1 or season 2 is better, but I like season 2 quite a lot. Either way, I think both seasons are good. They both have the same sort of problems that we kind of talked about last time, in the sense that it kind of ends with a whimper more than it ends on a bang. It's not like the kind of like explosive dramatic ending, just kind of a lot of things sort of ha- happen really quickly or whatever. But I just think that like the tension and the drama from episode to episode, it was riveting at the time. It was mind-blowingly riveting at the time, right? And it still works to this day. And I just like I marvel at this show every time I watch it, just because like it is so complex. There's just like so much happening. But I don't know. It's good. It's just good.
Yeah, so I will agree that it's enjoyable. I'm not as hot on it as you are. I think it's got some different problems than last time. I do think it solved some of the problems. Like they've excised 90% of the teen bullshit, which I think is good. And I think like the previous season. So for since those of you who don't have insight into this, as I watch these, I kind of like stream of conscious to Buddy in a private chat that we have. And the clue for Buddy is when I'm in trance is when I stop doing that because I'm like taken in by the plot instead of like noticing weird things. And so I think like the previous season, it kind of gets better towards the end. I think I would agree with the ends with the whimper thing. Um, and I think it's got a couple of major missteps at the end, but we'll talk about that at the
Oh, I'm very interested in that. Okay.
on the other
Yeah,
side of
see, the
the.
thing that I think is interesting is I think I also agree that it gets better towards the end, just because like a lot of stuff gets set up and then starts to sort of like pay off like dominoes, right? Like it's just like
Mm.
one by one, bam, 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 right? Whereas a lot of the like the first half of the season is sort of like mysterious, but like the beating heart of it for me is Aqualad. And the part that's tough about this is I lived in a world where we were watching it week to week. So you have it kind of surprised me, I guess, on the rewatch, because I'm binging it obviously, how quick you go from Aqualad betrays the team to join his dad because he's furious that the love of his life, Tula, was
Well,
killed as a member of the. I'm sorry.
should we put this on the other side of the spoiler warning because it sounds like
Oh my
you're
god, we're not on the
pretty.
other side of the spoiler ring. Fuck.
Yeah.
Okay, here's what we do. Spoilers from this point forward. Okay, now cut that way earlier. Cut that in the
We're
beginning.
live, buddy. We
We
can't.
gotta, we gotta cut that back.
I mean, you haven't technically spoiled it yet, but yes, we are on the other side of the spoiler warning at this point. I think, yeah. You have our
Okay, so
thoughts, yeah.
I'm sorry, I completely misspoke about the spoiler. So yes, so the mystery of what's going on with Aqualad and understanding what's happening like with Aqualad and just like the drama of it was just so juicy. And I can in kind of in the same way that I can kind of tap into those feelings about like the Phantom Menace maybe. I just like works for me in a world where even I think cognitively the opening is a little slow and convoluted and kind of like hard to parse, if that makes sense. Does that do you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, so I was actually spoiled on the Aqualad is not actually betraying them thing.
Oh
Um,
man, that is a heartbreaker. Holy shit.
I don't really know though, because like that seemed obvious to me. Like, so I guess for spoiler territory, the most surprising thing to me to come out of this season is at the end of the season when Kid Flash dies. I like Googled when does he come back because I was certain that that was going to happen by now, and I assume it will happen in the future in the fourth, because I was the most surprising thing in the world was that he wasn't. So this is my biggest problem with the end of the film, or the end of not the film, the season, is that Wally. It's Wally, right? It's Wally West. Yeah, his death feels entirely unearned. It feels like it just happens to fulfill the safe partner of the dangerous couple trope ends up dying, type thing, right? Like that seemed way to form. It didn't. It's not really foreshadowed well. And I think this rides on the back on a larger problem with the series, which there are too many characters in season two.
Wait till you get to season 3, buddy. Yeah,
Really?
that is, I get that for sure. There are a ton of characters with a ton of things going on. I think a lot of them are pretty one note, right? Like, Batgirl, Wonder Girl. There's a ton of kids on the team who don't have complex things going on compared to Impulse, right? Blue Beetle,
Yeah.
obviously, as sort of these like really headlining characters that have a lot kind of at stake and on the table. Superboy, Miss Martian, um, obviously, uh, like all of the normal kids kind of still have
Yeah.
their own shit. Um, but yeah, I definitely think that it is a little bit crowded, and it's one of those things where if you just sort of whiff for a second in sort of like understanding what's going on, you will fail to comprehend stuff that is like pretty quick to get over, right? Like Arsenal joins the team off screen. He's a part of the team. He joins Infinity Inc. And like and I would say he's a pretty major character in the season, but like a lot of this stuff is movement that's happening off screen and doing
Yeah.
off screen stuff, right?
Y-
Um,
Yeah. So
which
that.
is a
Yeah. Yeah.
casualty, I guess.
Yeah. No, and like there's some like weird choices there. Like I was certain that the twist on like Arsenal like goes rogue and like blows something up, blows the LexCorp thing up, was going to be that the additive was like totally and entirely innocent, and this was like a three steps ahead move by Luther, and it's not. So it's like, or maybe it's like four steps ahead because he's planning on making them look bad anyway. But um, no, it's like it seemed like there was some like weird kind of like plot lines here. Although on the opposite side and on the plus side of like the tons of characters thing is last time we talked about this, I said the kind of like thing that I could see how it engages so many people is like the DC minutia. I think step two of this for this season is I mean, it's literally just Static Shock, but it's like all like every like kid who like watched Static Shock, like I was like, is that fucking Static Shock, right?
Yep, yep.
Like
There's
uh,
more to it actually because Kai, who is the Native American that does the thing and grows, is a reference to the Super Friends,
is this Apache
where
Chief? It's like a more politically correct
Apache,
version of
yeah,
yeah,
they made like a real version of Apache Chief, and I was just like, holy shit! I didn't even get that at first. It took me like maybe 2 or 3 episodes to really get it, and I was like, oh my god, the geniuses,
yeah. No,
like the And actually, by the way, the funny thing is I caught the other reference to the other guy is El Dorado, who is like another very like minor, DC lore character. I just like that stuff is the best. It's so good.
You know what the funny thing to me was is that for the longest time I like had like Blue Beetle and the Tick confused, as like then the only reason I knew that they were any different is because Max Landis has been doing like like an auditory version of his DC universe on his
Sure.
YouTube channel, and he talks and he has like a cool version of Ted Cord, and that's what and I went and looked that up, and so I had context for that, which is cool because like. Is Blue Beetle like a particularly popular DC superhero? Because I'm not super deep into DC.
Which one? Ted Cord, you mean?
I guess like the only
Okay,
Blue Beetle I
so
know anything about is Ted Cord because of the Max Landis thing. Not because.
okay, yeah. So the history of Blue Beetle is he's sort of one of these like C-list characters. You remember how when we originally talked about this, I made reference to there's Alan Scott, right, who is the Green Lantern who carved a Green Lantern out of a green meteorite to become the Green Lantern, and then there's Hal Jordan who gets the ring and is a space cop, right? And they're kind of two different. It's the Golden Age version, the Silver Age version.
Hmm.
There's a version of that with Blue Beetle who is referenced in here, right? They talk about Dan
The
Garnet.
archaeologist.
Yeah, the
Is
archaeologist.
this
That is the golden era Blue Beetle, right? The Silver Age Blue Beetle is Ted Cord, who is just a tech guy, right? He's the inspiration for Night Owl in Watchmen. He's basically just a nerd who's very techy and becomes the Blue Beetle. The thing that like kind of rises him to the occasion, he's very low level for most of his run, right? The thing that rises to him to the occasion is one, the Keith Giffen, JMD Mateus run of Justice League that I mentioned earlier with the punch, where Batman punches Guy Gardner in the face. Blue Beetle is in that run. And he's best friends with another superhero, another C-list superhero called Booster Gold, and they just have like a great chemistry that's like famous, and people like that. That's what people loved about the character. And then in the 2000s, Ted Cord died in a mini series that was actually pretty fucking hype, to be honest. It was like it was a lead up to like one of those big event comics like Civil War, like Secret Invasion, something like that. This one was the lead up to Infinite Crisis, where he was like, I think there's a conspiracy going on, and he goes to everybody in the DC universe and they all think he's fucking crazy, and then he shows up to beat the bad guy, and the bad guy just shoots him in the head because he's just a normal guy. And like the murder of Blue Beetle was this like huge deal at the time. And then what came out of that is Jaime Reyes, which is this Blue Beetle, right, with the scarab and the reach on his back, which was sort of a it was like a mid 2000s thing. The thing that I liked about it was, it was kind of the first representation for like a Latin superhero. Most of the there's a couple of them sprinkled in there, right? Even so much so that people like latch on to characters like Bane. One of the interesting things that comics people get mad about is that Bane gets whitewashed in everything except for Young Justice, because Bane is Latin American in and like is from Santa Prisca in the comics, and in Young Justice, and that's it. Basically everywhere else he's like Tom Hardy or whatever, right? Anyway, and so Jaime Reyes, he has a solo run, which was written and I think both written and drawn by Keith Giffen, and it touched on a lot of this Reach stuff, if I remember correctly. And then he's just kind of popped around. I think he was a member of the Teen Titans for a while, that kind of thing, right? Like Blue Beetle has been in like the Scarab lore and all this shit. He's been around
okay.
for a long time. So that's sort of the history of Blue Beetle for you.
Just so I get it clear, the history of the Blue Beetle that they kind of like do a 2 minute version of in Young Justice is accurate to the comics. Like archaeologist finds a beetle that Ted Cord like hides away because he's afraid of it, and then it like
So that part is accurate. I don't think the original Scarab was the thing that Dan Garnet was using.
okay,
That might be the case. I read these comics a long time ago. This is
yeah,
like
that's fair.
12, 15 years ago. So it might just be a detail that I'm not remembering. But the big thing was that it was something that everybody thought was related to Ted Cord, and then you find out that it's like alien shit or whatever.
Okay, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yep, yep.
Did you enjoy Blue Beetle? Blue Beetle really takes the spotlight in kind of like the back half, right? As it
Yeah.
becomes about sort of the politics between him, Green Beetle, Black Beetle. They're trying to free Blue and everything like that. How did you feel about all that stuff?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was probably one of the better fleshed out storylines, right? Like he definitely got the attention he needed. Him and you said the other team of kids, like what, the Infinity Corp or something like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
so Infinity Inc. is what they're
Infinity.
called. Infinity Inc. is the okay. So there's the Justice as Teen Titans as to the Justice League is Infinity Inc. as to the Justice Society, if that makes sense. Where the Justice Society is Golden Age heroes, the Justice League is Silver Age heroes. The Infinity Inc. is just like mostly kids uh of the Justice Society who are like not doing Teen Titans related shit.
Okay, okay, that makes sense. I guess.
But there's also an arc where Lex Luthor buys the copyright to Infinity Inc. and then makes his own super teen version, which I think is kind of what they're pulling a little bit here, um, with like Lex trying to control Infinity Inc. But it ends up not, really being a thing.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think the Arsenal storyline was like fairly underserved, right? Like other than I think the Red Arrow half of it, right? Like except for the baby thing, like the baby, like them carrying the baby into that temple was just like a little bit too
That
much
is,
for.
that's comics accurate, my dude. He
I can
marries
criticize the
Cheshire,
comics
and
too.
he has a baby named Leon. I mean, carrying into the temple, I guess is
Yeah, no, having the
I
baby
definitely
isn't
get
a
you there.
problem, and like
Yeah,
I think that's a pacing issue in the show, where it's just
sure.
like it's like, hey, here's the Red Arrow again. He's like losing his mind trying to find the original, and they have an intervention for him, and then Shoshu shows up, and by the way, he also has a kid, and now he's dead. So like he's like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, the thing about Red Arrow and Cheshire, that honestly surprised me. I was like, I cannot believe they're going this far. Honestly, it's crazy because so that happens, and then in the comics he has this kid, and then Leon is his daughter, and he has the Leon with Cheshire. Because there's a while where I'm pretty sure he's working for the League of Assassins alongside Cheshire, um, and it's all very complicated or whatever, but they like do get married and they do have a kid, and then later on he does legitimately get his arm blown off in like a big he's part of the Justice League, and he gets his arm blown off as part of like a big event or whatever, and he just doesn't have his like left arm. So it's kind of crazy that they did both versions of Red Arrow and Arsenal, which are both comics accurate in their own ways, um in the
yeah,
same show. So Arsenal is what Red Arrow called himself. Arsenal is kind of his Nightwing title, right? He went from Speedy to Arsenal to Red Arrow when he joined the Justice League, and Green Arrow was like, "You're not a sidekick anymore. You're official," right? Um, so both Arsenal and Red Arrow are like well represented from the comics, though they do not mention that he is a heroin addict, which was a huge part of his character in the comics. I guess it's a kids show; you can't do that.
yeah. No, that makes sense to me. That's like, they'll eschew that. I actually think that the one of the more interesting storylines in the show is kind of like the dynamic of like the Huntress, Artemis, Cheshire,
I think that stuff
Sportsmaster.
is incredibly good, especially because I like the internal politics of the light a lot. Like one of my favorite details about this season is Sportsmaster is the enforcer of the light, but like he's pissed, about Aquaman murdering Artemis, and then they replace him with Deathstroke, and just like that whole interaction I thought was really great. And probably my favorite episode is the episode where they have to or maybe it's a pair of episodes, right? Where it Yeah, so it's kind of a pair of episodes where they abduct Miss Martian, bring her to Calderam, and she has to like deprogram him. I think that is my favorite storyline in the season, right? Like, is Calderam a traitor? Kind of running parallel with McGann is really going kind of crazy with her powers. Then those two intersect when she like mind fries him, and then there's all the drama of they abduct McGann, and then they have to stage the breakout so that they don't blow Calderon's cover and everything like that. I just loved all of that stuff. I think that stuff like works like gangbusters.
I think I generally agree. I think that maybe McGann doesn't face enough, like kind of like reckoning for like what she's done, right? Like
Yeah, it's actually a big deal in the community. A lot of people really hate McGann for this, for like um abusing her mind powers. I remember at the time it was a huge mystery for why Superboy and McGann broke up, which is it's sort of pinned that way, right?
Right.
Um and then you find out it's because she mind wiped him, right? Because they had an argument and she didn't want to deal with it, so she removed the memory of the argument from his mind, and he freaked out. And I was just like, "Holy shit, that's
Yeah.
so like that is an insane invasion of his privacy, and it is incredibly fucked up for her to have done."
Right. And like, I think that's like a good kind of moment where like you can be like she doesn't quite get it, right? Like this is like and but like you need to have her have like a strong comeuppance for it. And I just don't think it's there, right? Like it's yeah.
I mean, I think there is sort of like a narrative comeuppance in the sense that like a lot of bad shit happens because of this, right? She almost blows Calderon's cover. She royally fucks up with Green Beetle and Blue
Yeah.
Beetle, obviously, because she's like, so traumatized about this whatever that she kind of misses the clues that Green Beetle is actually bad. Um, but I kind of agree that I feel like there was a moment where Nightwing kind of chews out Arsenal and is like, "You're off the team." I feel like it would have been very fair to have had that moment with Nightwing and McGann at the end of the season when it's like, "Okay, all this shit is done. You're out. We can't trust you, right?"
Yeah. Yeah, or at least or just like something, right? Like something a little bit stronger than like it feels almost like a throwaway line. It's like, oh, I fucked up because I couldn't, dive into Green Beetle. Um,
Yeah.
what what is the excuse for what happened with Simon? Like the point is the poison supposed to put him into like a multi-month coma because it feels like they like Artemis like shoots him with the poison and like that's enough to kind of like it feels like more time elapses between like when he goes when she poisons him and like the end of the McGann thing than should, or at least it feels that way to me. Maybe I'm just like got my timing off because I watched it too fast in a row. But
I actually think you're correct. I do think that is sort of a plot hole. I think that might be like a very legitimate plot hole thinking about it.
yeah, because like he like I guess you could hand wave it a little bit that he's just out for like as long as the plot needs him to be out. Like that's how strong the poison is or whatever. But it feels weird, right? Like
Yeah,
um
I feel that.
yeah um yeah. I also so I think the kind of the big moment, right, where like Aqualad like turns and like fucks over both of them, right? Like I think that that's a well done scene, but we also I don't think get a lot of build up as like that is like an internal scheme, right? Like we're told that like he's infiltrating them, right? But we don't actually see a lot of like the mechanics of that infiltration as it builds towards this revealing moment, right? Like we see how it clashes with the team, right? How it causes like drama within the team and how it causes problems elsewhere. But we don't see a lot of like Aqualad setting up things so that we have any clue about what this reveal is going to be like. And I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just kind of like I don't know. I feel like I would have liked to see more of that on the inside, but that might just be my preference. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't know. I sort of think the 1, 2, 3 that happens with Aqualad. So, because the first thing that happens is there's the ship, there's the Krolataean ship, right? Episode 1, you don't know, we don't know shit about Aqualad. Episode 2, don't know shit. Episode 3, all of a sudden, ho ho, Aqualad is working for the bad guys, right? And you get a little bit of his motivation, right? I think he yells at Nightwing about Tula, and he yells at Aquaman about uh not knowing who his father was, right? But otherwise, I'm pretty sure, you know, it's pretty much just established that yep, Aqualad is bad now. And then it happens the second time where he blows up Mount Justice, which I like that episode a lot because that one feels very true to his character. And like you later learn that he's doing it to sort of like cover the tracks of whatever. Um, but at the time, I remember thinking like, yeah, this is crazy because Aqualad legitimately outsmarts Nightwing. right? That Dick is not good enough to kind of go toe to toe on a strategic or a tactical level with Aqualad, and Aqualad wins by by blowing up Mount Justice. And then the third interaction is the Artemis one, and I don't know that I think any moment has affected me in media quite as much as Aqualad stabbing Artemis with the assumption in my head, with the understanding in my head that he's evil, right? Just like I freaked out. And I think if there's one thing I would criticize about this, I hate that they resolve it in the same episode. I wish it was a cliffhanger. I wish that I got to hang on to that for longer, right? Of just like, oh my god, he murders one of his friends who like I was just I was freaking out. I was actually watching this. I'm pretty sure I was pirating this at the time because I remember pausing it and just having an absolute meltdown as like as I was trying to explain. Maybe somebody was there. I think I was trying to explain to like my roommate at the time. I was like, and then Aqualad stabs Artemis through the chest with his water sword. What the fuck? You know what I mean? And then the immediate undercut of, oh, it was not, not actually, that didn't actually happen. On one hand, I'm happy about it because I don't want Aqualad to be evil, and I like him a lot, and I think I want him to be a good guy who succeeds and not a bad guy who loses, right? But on the other hand, man, I really wish that I got to just like hold on to that moment of just like longer because it was so good.
Yeah, I wonder if that would have like felt like I wonder, if we split the universe and like have that universe where that reveal, where the back reveal happens, if you feel the same way, just because like I could also see that like feeling cheap, right? Like it's like
Sure.
a cliffhanger, and then immediately in the next episode, it's like, well, he's not actually
Yeah,
either.
honestly, that's fair. That's something I complain about a lot, right? Like something I complain about is, for like resurrections, for instance. If you're gonna do the resurrection, let me in on it, right? I want to
Yeah, yeah,
know. I don't want to feel like I'm being, like lied to in a
yeah, yeah.
way.
This
So
is your
you're right.
Man of Steel, right? Like, or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
BVS,
So
yeah,
like
yeah,
that very much absolutely could have been, like the case or whatever. But man, I mean,
yeah. No,
what a moment. I just loved that moment so much. I thought that like I just thought that that's like peak storytelling. Like that's where you're in the middle of it. You got these characters that you care about, some drama that you're invested in, and the story is like playing for keeps. That just like feels so good. And I do think that there is a bit of Young Justice that wants to be high stakes, but is also sort of suppressed in a way by it being a kids show, right?
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah,
And it can't quite go as big as I would otherwise want it to, like otherwise want it to go.
yeah. I agree with that. Um, I don't know, like, and like I said before, I think it's held back by like just like having so many things that it wants to do, right? Like, you know, it was Legrand is like the other Atlantean, um, and he's like basically there to be like just literally just there to be McGon's rebound boyfriend, right? And also be
Yep,
like, I guess like
and a
a,
huge dick.
yeah,
Just
and
like a
but
huge asshole for no reason.
yeah, and be like also like a bruiser. Like, I remember
Yep.
when he like puffed himself up. It was like there's like a couple of like there's like redundancies on this team that like don't make a ton of sense to me. Also, it took me like a Wikipedia search to figure out who the like the black guy who becomes the Guardian, but like I suppose Fasto is, right? Like he's
Oh yeah,
like,
Mal.
yeah,
Hmm.
Mal. He's like that guy that showed up from their high school, but like, is it explained like how he knows? Like, is he just like kind of like he's just kind of there? Um, I mean, and
Yeah, I feel like he and Bumblebee have like a little bit of a thing. Um, and I think I appreciate it, but I also hate it at the same time. Like the thing I appreciate that it's willing to give these sort of side characters their own little moments, right? Like
right,
Mal and Bumblebee have an episode that's about their relationship drama. She's working too much. They work together to fight a bad guy, and like it's that's like classic television. 22 minutes, they solve the problem. They kind of fade into the background, and I think that that's sort of fine. And I kind of and there's a couple of other places this happens. This also happens with Beast Boy, for instance,
yeah,
over the course of the show. And then there are like, and that's when it kind of steps up. There's some more, Tim. Uh, Tim Drake, who is the new Robin that replaced Dick Grayson, right? Um, Tim Drake has an episode which is kind of about his anxiety about being chosen to pick, Beta or Alpha Squad, whatever, like whatever. It's like, and I like that the show takes its time with those characters, and it's like, oh no, 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 like you get an episode. Here's your episode. It's about you. It's about your little arc, right? But I do think that that is contributes to this feeling of like there being too much, too much tuna, too much going on
Yeah.
in the overall show, where you have all this stuff with Nightwing, McGann, Superboy, Lagan is part of that. Artemis is part of that, right? Calderon is obviously central to that. So that's like 6 characters on just one piece of the storyline, right? Then you have a whole other piece of the storyline that's Blue Beetle, that's Impulse, that's Black, like all of these bad guys, Black Beetle, Green Beetle, the individual members of the Justice League are, popping in and out, right? You have the Infinity Inc. kids or whatever. And I like some of this stuff and I don't like others. Like, I actually like Arsenal's thing for what it's worth. I think Arsenal is cool in the show, and I really like his final thing, right? Where everybody else gets caught, and he like kind of freaks out, but like also goes hard because he doesn't want to be put on ice again, and becomes sort of this like inside agent that is on the war world or whatever else. Um, and another thing that I like about that stuff is that the MacGuffins tend to take center stage. Like there's a lot of work paid attention to who has what aspect or control of what aspect of the war world, for instance, um, in order to like create like a through line just on plot objects, even if there isn't a real through line as much when it comes to characters, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. No, I think I buy that.
Like
Yeah.
one of the things that I think was legitimately great on this rewatch, and I don't think I really noticed it before, but I paid more attention to it this time, was there's a lot of attention to detail placed on who is doing what at what spots with regard to the war world, right? And because I remember thinking at first, so first of all, I love the Mongol episode. I love the Mongol episode a lot just because Keith David voices Mongol and he has a great voice for it. Um, but one of the other things that the Mongol episode does is it creates this real feeling of tension because Mongol explains to the superheroes how bad the reach is, and you also know that Mongol gets set up by Vandal Savage. Vandal Savage is there in Rimbor, and he's the one who's whispering in Mongol's ear that is convincing Mongol to go to Earth with Warworld, which is the first time that you see that actually the light and the reach aren't working together as harmoniously as you thought. And I just think all of that drama is like really good. Um, but it that doesn't really interact with any of our main characters all that much, right? Mongol himself is just kind of a big guy to move a bunch of plot mechanics into place to sort of set up the latter half of the show with this like huge ticking clock of, it's not really a ticking clock, but it's just sort of this like huge MacGuffin of like who controls the war world at any given time.
Yeah. 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 No, I can see that. Um, there's like there's a lot of like weird kind of like side steps in the show too, right? Like the court case, right? Like my big joke going into this that I failed to deliver was like I was expecting a great courtroom drama, and there's but like the idea that like the kids managed to convince the obviously corrupt court to be not corrupt for a moment to like just like that felt like I don't know. I guess if it's fine because it's not a courtroom drama show, but it's just kind of like really like them like being like just do it good this time. That way you can convince other people to be corrupt. Okay, like yeah, like that doesn't bother me so much, but it is kind of like I was hoping for a little bit more there. I mean, maybe that's just because I
Yeah,
like
I
court
think
stuff,
that
but
that falls into the same resolution as the all of the Calderon stuff wrapping up so quickly, and sort of all the Reach stuff wrapping up so quickly.
yeah,
There's a lot of scuttlebutt. I should say, I don't believe this, but a lot of people do talk about this. There's a lot of scuttlebutt that the show got canceled early because season 1 had 26 episodes, season 2 only had 20. And part of it is that season 2 got pretty behind in terms of production. One of the weird things about Young Justice season 2 is, so first of all, it aired out of order, which was awful for a show like this. Yeah, and there was a huge, gigantic gap between the first half of the season, which ends on Aqualad killing Artemis and then being revealed as an inside agent, right? That was like the break, and then there was like 8 months between the rest of the season airing, and then the rest of the season aired, and I think a couple of episodes were like out of order. So a lot of people were like, the network fucked it, like fucked it over, which is why the ending is so rushed, and you just like kind of there's a lot of stuff that's just like ass pulley, I guess I would
Yeah,
say.
yeah,
So for instance, Miss Martian beating up Deathstroke off screen and then posing as Deathstroke and shooting both, Artemis and Aqualad in order to coax a confession out of it, like all that stuff. You know what I mean? Like that's just like a lot of narrative heavy lifting to be revealed in like 30 seconds of dialogue.
yeah. No, that's part of maybe why I felt like I said, I would have liked to see a little bit more like run up there because like
Mm,
I'm fine like letting those things kind of like resolve in the moment because like it's I guess whatever it is happens, but like you know it feels kind of like a very just so right like like was what's his name the master the bad guy sorcerer noticing Artemis is enchanted with a locket. Like, was that
mm,
supposed to be on purpose, or was that like a misstep? Like all that's really muddled, but it all kind of like works out well enough. That I'm like, okay, whatever, right? Like,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, like, and a lot of that stuff I feel like is just kind of for stakes in the moment in a
yeah,
way, right? Like, it kind of doesn't matter that Ra's al Ghul immediately sees the glamour charm on Artemis because as a writer, we know that this is all coming to a head anyway. So you can kind of afford to let that stuff, like to let that stuff happen. Whereas before, and this is part of why I think the middle of the season is so good, right? Like before, there is a lot of tension around, will Artemis get revealed? Will Calderon get revealed? How does Sportsmaster and Cheshire's attack on the sub end in a way that doesn't blow their cover, right? Um, and so like that, those plot mechanics are very interesting. But then you're kind of left with this thing of like, I guess we know that we understand the underlying set of circumstances, and the drama's kind of already played out. We've already done this, like Aquaman is or Aqualad is an inside job sort of thing, and there's nowhere else to go, so we're just going to kind of clip it in a whole episode. And it does the same thing that happened in season 1, where you walk into an episode with a certain premise and then the rug kind of gets ripped out from under you, right? Where the premise of the episode in season 1 is, oh, I'm actually Lex Luthor's my dad and I'm evil, or Queen Bee is blackmailing me or whatever. But then you learn that, oh no, actually they all had a conversation and solved this issue kind of beforehand or whatever. It's the same sort of thing, right? Like Aqualad sets up the light and the reach for this failure, but we walk into that episode with an understanding that this is about the light and the reach falling out.
yeah. No, and it's better than like the thing that weirdly popped into my mind is Ocean's 12, right, where like the whole thing is a work,
Mm,
but we're not aware of it as the audience. Like we're at least
yeah,
partially aware of it. But I would have liked, to have had like the heist walk-in type moment, right? Because like that makes, I don't know. I like those moments. I think they work better. But I could see it being like cut short, right? Because like there's a couple of things that happen in this moment. Like you said, the reach thing gets wrapped up real quick. I did like the touch where G. Gordon Jeffrey like show like isn't a total shitbag, right? Like he's like consistent at least. He's like, oh, so you're actually a shitbag alien, right? Like explain yourself, right? Like that, like for what is obviously kind of like a very kind of like blatant kind of like parody of like a like what I assume is like a Fox News talking head, right? Like,
yeah.
uh,
Well, so G. Gordon Godfrey actually predates that. He is a character from old Justice League comics who I'm pretty sure was hired by Lex Luthor and then later turns out to be Desaad from Apocalypse, but I could be wrong, or maybe Granny Goodness. I guess G Gordon. So he could also be Granny Goodness as well. It's really confusing.
What is
But
Who's Granny Goodness?
you don't know who Granny Goodness is?
No. Am I supposed to?
Oh my god. Okay, so let me see if I can let me see if I can back up for this. So in Zack Snyder's Justice League, there's the guy with the melty face. Do you remember that guy that Steppenwolf is talking to?
Yeah, yeah. I
That's
think.
Desaad. Desaad is like Darkseid's kind of like vizier and like high torturer or
Sure.
whatever. There's a flashback in there where you see Darkseid, and then on one side you see Desaad, and on the other side you see a woman in like battle armor with like white hair. Do you
Okay.
remember that at all?
Vaguely.
That's that character is truly named Granny Goodness and is a evil she's kind of Darkseid's like bodyguard, like captain of his guard. She runs a group called the Female Furies, I think. Um there's a bunch of them. They have names. They're supervillains or whatever. The most important detail from that is that one of them used to be Big Barda, who is another superhero and is related to all this shit. Anyway, the point is, Granny
No.
Goodness is a real character who exists, and I'm pretty sure G. Gordon Godfrey is either Desaad or Granny Goodness in the comics. The important thing, G. Gordon Godfrey has a talk show where he shits on the Justice League. I think this is from the 80s, where he just shits on the Justice League relentlessly, and the Justice League has really bad PR, and that's like just like an underlying thread, at
So
some point in the comics.
so
Um,
who comes first? Him or J. Jonah Jameson? Because it seems like there's like an obvious parallel there, right?
Oh,
Like,
J. Jonah Jameson for sure,
okay.
absolutely. And yeah, and G. Gordon Godfrey is absolutely like, doing that J. Jonah Jameson thing. Um, but it's a little more tactical. Like J. Jonah Jameson legitimately is like he's a shithead, but he like legitimately believes that Spider-Man is a menace or whatever, right? G. Gordon Godfrey is doing it to discredit the Justice League for whatever purposes. In the show, it is I think he just works for Lex Luthor,
Yeah,
right?
well, in
Um,
the show, I mean, I guess it could go either way
yeah.
because if Luther wants him to turn on the Reach, he could do that. But like, at least from the viewer's perspective at this moment in the show, he could legitimately he could be like, a true believer. I guess is the right way to
Yeah.
put it. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah. And I do also appreciate that he is a true believer, especially because it weirdly puts the light in this position of being good guys, which I always thought that is like I love it. I was pitching this the other day when it came to Warcraft. Maybe we can talk about this in the back half or whatever. But like the trope where the good guys have to team up with the bad guys because like there is a greater threat at play. So Superman and Lex Luthor are working together to beat up Darkseid, whoever, right? That's like all timer. That I love that trope. I go ape shit for that trope. And they essentially did that here with the Reach, which was really cool, and I liked it a lot.
oh man, have you seen the Rocketeer? I think that's the name of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I like the moment that always reminds me of that is when the mafia boss is like, I might be a mafia boss, but I'm a goddamn American.
American, yeah. Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that. Well, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about the Rocketeer for? Wow, I haven't seen that movie in a long time. That's a good movie though.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, no,
it's
that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, there's a whole thing in like modern era Justice League comics where um I've explained this storyline before. It's called Forever Evil, where the evil version from an alternate universe, right? The crime syndicate, which is like the mirror version of the Justice League, where they're all evil. It's Ultraman, Owlman. Um, I can't remember any of the other names, but there's like a bunch of these. There's a bunch of these characters, and they're like it's Superman but evil. It's Batman but evil. They come to Earth and they imprison all of the heroes in the world inside of Firestorm's head, which makes sense in context, but I won't explain it.
okay.
Um, the storyline of Forever Evil is that so the crime syndicate show up, they're trying to take over the world, and the people who stand against them are the supervillains, right? It's Lex Luthor, uh Black Manta, Sinestro, Captain Cold, who are like the arch enemies of each of the individual members of the Justice League, right? And there's this great moment of like there's this moment where the evil Flash shows up, and Captain Cold shoots the evil Flash's leg, freezing it, and then kicks its knee, and his whole leg shatters, right? And that's the kind of shit that you can't do that. Captain Cold can't do that to the Flash, but he can do that to the evil Flash, right?
Yeah.
And so just the bit of the supervillains being the good guys, taking down worse supervillains, like that's just good shit.
Yeah.
That is just A plus. I love it every day.
If I recall correctly, though, Captain Cold isn't like Captain Cold's more greedy than he is like a bad, like an evil for evil
Oh
type
yeah,
guy, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the rule, yeah, so Captain Cold is like the leader of the Rogues, which is like
Yeah. The Rogues Gallery. That's where the term comes from,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah, it's where the term comes from. Yeah, so the Rogues are like the Sinister Six of the Flash's Rogues Gallery, and they have a bunch of rules, and one of them is don't kill the Flash. They're just looking to rob banks, or they're just common criminals, right? And and so he is just sort of like a normal villain compared to somebody like Sinestro, who's like fucking space Hitler,
Yeah. No,
basically.
I mean
You know?
that is what I like about like him and like Lex Luthor, because Lex Luthor is always kind of he's like the he's like Syndrome from Invincibles, right? Like he's kind
Yeah.
of like, I am the apex of humanity, but I am on humanity's side type of thing, right? Like I think that makes for like very compelling villains, especially on like an ongoing basis, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what they're doing here with the light, right?
yeah.
Rachel Gould. I like that we learn more about the individual members of the light. Like there's the thing where Ocean Master is deposed kind of off screen, and like Black Manta takes that spot. So you have, and it's interesting that they are pretty human based, right? There's not a lot of like aliens or stuff like that. So like you do get the side that, yeah, at the end of the day, like Vandal Savage is a huge piece of shit, but he's a piece of shit that wants the Earth to remain protected from intergalactic threats, right? Which is part of where the story ends, right? When it comes to Earth and the War World and galactic stuff with the Reach.
Yeah, I kept confusing in my head Vandal Savage with Immortal Man, the guy from Invincible.
Oh, the Immortal.
Yeah.
That's funny. Vandal Savage and the Immortal are kind of the same character.
No, like
Vandal Savage is like the first caveman who he's like a caveman. He like finds a meteor, and the meteor makes him literally live forever. And he is legitimately a bunch of people in history. Like Vandal Savage, I think, is Genghis Khan. He's just like a bunch of famous people from history. It's like, oh, this was Vandal Savage the whole time, right? I even think he might have been Hitler or something like that, right? Um, but so the Immortal is sort of the good version of Vandal Savage in a way, because the Immortal is literally Abraham Lincoln.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure.
Yeah, no, yes, yeah, yeah. We talked about that during that episode, but like
Yeah,
but they look similar, right? Like they kind of got like that,
yeah.
like so I'm like staring at Fatal Seven, like, was he Abraham Lincoln? It's like, no, that's the other guy.
He was not Abraham Lincoln. Vandal Savage was absolutely not Abraham Lincoln. I'm sorry to report. Yeah,
Mm,
I mean, I love Vandal Savage. Vandal Savage is probably one of my favorite, just like supervillains in general. And so him sort of taking center stage. I like that he is the kind of head, it seems, of the light compared to Lex Luthor. Because I think it is easy if you're in the writers' room of Young Justice, right? And you're like, okay, we're making this supervillain team of a bunch of mastermind characters. Who is in charge, right? It's so easy to say Lex Luthor, right? Or even Ra's al Ghul, or kind of any of these other, like members, right? But I think Vandal Savage is the coolest answer, and I am glad that they went with that answer.
I have a couple of curious questions. Is
Sure.
Vandal Savage somebody's villain in particular? Like, is he primary? Like, like,
He is mostly the villain of the Justice Society. He's not of any of like the major real heroes. The most common. He's kind of It's kind of like, do you know Kang the Conqueror in Marvel comics?
uh, I I'm vaguely familiar, and that might be
Thanos is actually kind of a pretty good example of this
okay.
too, actually, where he is sort of a team villain for the Justice Society and the Justice League rather than an individual villain, right? Like we would say Lex Luthor isn't an individual villain for Superman, but he's like part of the villain team. Or Ra's al Ghul is an individual villain for Batman, but he's part of the team.
Yeah.
Vandal Savage is really more of just like a wider team villain, right? He
Okay.
he has specific relationships with certain characters, but one almost all of those characters I'm pretty sure are Justice Society characters. They don't show up in this, like Wildcat and the Alan Scott Green Lantern and the original version. I guess we do see Jay Garrick in this, but like he has a lot of beef with those three in particular from like the Justice Society. Um, but I don't know. In most of comics, Vandal Savage is just a team villain of this like kind of mastermind immortal
Yeah,
kind of thing.
that was the other question: is does he have powers that aren't like lives forever and I get and like has like millions of years or not millions but like thousands of years of
I think
experience?
he might have like low level kind of like super strength and shit like that, but maybe not. I mean, one of the weird things about Vandal Savage is that he is like one of the people that he is Cain from the Cain and Abel story, right?
Okay, yeah.
Where in the comics there's a whole thing about this, which is called the Bible of Crime, or maybe it's just the Crime Bible. And there's this kind of religion of crime where Cain is revered as kind of the first prophet because he committed the first crime, he committed the first murder, right? Um,
Wait, is
and there's this,
God real in the DC universe?
so first of all, yes, but secondly, that doesn't quite play into any of this. The whole thing with the crime Bible is it's a bunch of prophecies, and so it's like it's sort of like Il'gynoth whispers in WoW or whatever. It's just like a ton of shit that is just like shotgunned, and some of it is like, oh, the red rock and the rage or whatever. The red rock is the rock that Cain uses to bash Abel's head in. And then I think it's also the meteorite that gives Vandal Savage his immortality also. Um and anyway, so like that's a whole other piece of it that is like incredibly complicated and goes into all of these other things. It actually does show up a little bit, I think, because there's Intergang and Whisper Adair. Do you remember those they're using apocalyptic weapons tech in the first season, maybe the second season?
Oh, yeah, like
That was the first season, right?
the first where it's like that's where Sphero comes from, or like Sphere Girl,
Oh
or
yeah, the super cycle.
yeah,
By the
yeah.
way, the super cycle comes from the comics, and I can explain that in a minute. But the apocalyptic tech that they're using, if that Intergang is using, Intergang is like the administrators of this Bible of this like crime Bible. And like Whisper Adair is like the leader of this whole thing. I don't know. It's very good, I will say. All of this stuff with the Bible of crime and everything like that, but it's complicated as fuck.
Okay.
You know what's crazy? That I know all of this shit offhand.
Yep. No, I mean, like, I love myself a good lore dive, but like it's like
Yeah, this is the deep dive of lore. Yeah, the Super Psycho comes from the original Young Justice comic books, actually. As does you remember the episode about Secret and Harm?
no. Wait, which ones?
There's
Which ones are these?
I think in season 1, there's an episode about a ghost
Oh, the
who can
ghost
only
kid
say the
who
word secret.
secret. Yeah, because her older brother killed her. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So the original version of Young Justice, which okay, there's 3 tiers. There's the Justice Okay, 4 tiers. There's the Justice Society way up top, all of the Golden Age heroes. Then there's the Justice League, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, right? Then at the time, there were the Titans. They were not the Teen Titans. The Teen Titans had grown up, Nightwing, Arsenal, a couple of other characters. Aqualad, who is not the black Aqualad, he's the white Aqualad. Garth becomes Tempest, right? They become the Titans, right? And then under them is the original Young Justice book, which is Tim Drake's Robin, Superboy, Connor Kent, Impulse, who shows up in season 2, right? As and before he is Kid Flash, he's Impulse. And then a couple of other characters. Mitch Martian is not involved in this. And Secret is one of the characters. She's a ghost. She phases through shit. I think she also might be able to like possess people. And one of the episodes, they find Sphere and figure out that it is an apocalyptic super motorcycle, and they go joyriding in the apocalypse super motorcycle. Both of those episodes were written by Peter David, who is the comic book art like guy who came up with the Young Justice team and wrote that whole issue, like that whole series of issues. So like they just included those two episodes, I guess, as a weird shout out to like me in particular, because I don't even think Young Justice was that popular a comic book. Like it's not famous at all. It only lasted for a couple of issues because then what happened is the Teen Titans got rebooted. Impulse became the true Kid Flash, right? Um, Cyborg took over like command of the team or whatever. Starfire was a part of it. It's this whole thing. Yeah, it's complicated as fuck. This lore.
Does Wally West die in the comics?
Mm-mm.
Okay, like not even a little bit.
Barry Allen dies in the comics, and Wally West becomes the new Flash.
Okay.
So in 1986, the Crisis on Infinite Earths happens, and Barry Allen sacrifices himself to save the universe. And Wally West, who is Kid Flash at the time, just gets promoted. He just becomes the Flash. And Barry Allen stays dead for the next 25 years until he gets resurrected,
All right.
maybe
And
in 2010 or something.
is it canonical that Wally West isn't as fast as Flash or Impulse?
Actually, the opposite. It's canonical that Wally West is faster because of the speed. So
I
you know
have
about
heard
the
of the Speed
Speed Force?
Force. Yes,
Okay,
I've
yeah,
heard of
yeah.
it.
So the Speed Force gets activated when you can run faster than the speed of light, right? The thing that gives you access to the Speed Force is if you can run faster than the speed of light, you have access to the power of the Speed Force. Certain characters have access to the power of the speed force but can't go as fast as the speed of light anymore, whereas like Superman never has access to the speed force because he can never break the barrier kind of thing. But like Jay Garrick, I think he can only go supersonic speed now. He can't go light speed anymore. But Wally West, all of that stuff with the speed force got established in Wally West's book,
Okay.
where it became clear that he can run faster than the speed of light, that's what defines like a Flash, like the Flash. The whole thing of Wally not being able to vibrate, is actually a bit from the original Young Justice book that Bart Allen Impulse is like suffering from, where um, he can't do the phase thing, and he fucks it up kind of like constantly until he figures it out.
Okay. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I that's actually kind of what I assumed was happened. That like we were gonna get some Speed Force bullshit because what with like Wally West is gonna come back from that.
Well, didn't you say you looked up that Wally West
No,
doesn't come back?
I know he doesn't get. Well, he doesn't come back yet. I
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I mean there is a season 4 coming out at some
Yeah,
point.
yeah. No, and like I like that is such like that is like the thing about that was like it was all the hallmarks of like not really dead, right? Doesn't like leave a corpse, like vanishes in a flash, and like when the Blue Beetle says like he will cease, he doesn't say he will die, he says he will cease, right? Like which is like like a you know this is like a year or two. The Blue Beetle's like he ceased, he didn't die, right? Like all you have to do is like
Mm.
do the thing, and then he'll come back or whatever, right? Like and I assume that was going to be a season 3 plot line. I mean, maybe it's never going to be a plot line, and they'll let it because they do this sometimes where like the things that I think are like obvious story beats, just don't
Oh
happen.
yeah, we ended with a bunch of predictions last time, right? Do you
Uh,
remember what any of your predictions were?
I don't, not at all.
I don't remember either. It was too long ago. What predictions do you have for season 3?
Uh, I mean, I would have said that Wally West comes back, but obviously that's not the case.
Fair enough. That one's off the table.
Yeah.
Disqualified.
Um, honestly, I don't know, just because like it wrapped up most of kind of like the outstanding questions. Also the time jump was like it was like right then at the start of the season. Like wow, like they left it on a cliffhanger and then like let 5 years go by. Look at that.
To be clear, and I do want to add this just as a little bit of context. Keep in mind that there are 8 years between the wrap up, real life years, between the the end of season 2 wrapping up on Cartoon Network and the debut of season 3, which I don't know if this matters to you, but it's called Young Justice Outsiders. Um Debuting on the DC Universe app that would eventually become HBO Max or whatever it's called. Um, so I don't know if that factors into your predictions at all, but
Is there another
that
time
that
skip?
happened. Yeah, I think so. It's definitely not as drastic as last time though. There's maybe honestly there isn't. There's got to be. It's a pretty different status quo when you like
Okay.
walk into the new team, but I don't get the sense that everybody's that much older in the sense
Yeah.
that like, Dick Grayson going from Robin to Nightwing is a pretty big gap. Whereas I don't think that there's anything along those lines in the next one. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
I mean, you
I
can't.
haven't
I don't
seen
think you
yeah.
can go 8 years and have half these people still be Young Justice, right? Like, except for like you, maybe like Connor, right? Like, um, whatever. Well, I mean, I'll I'll see. But like, what are my predictions then? I honestly don't know. There's like more
Okay, so if I
fighting
were
with
to
the
tell
light.
you there's one character in the current team, the wide, everyone from Nightwing to Batgirl, right? Who is the narrative spine of season 3, who's kind of like the underlying character who is kind of like Blue Beetle was in this season, right? Who do you think that would be?
I mean, it's kind of hard for me to not metagame this question because like the way you presented that, it means like it's not going to be somebody that I would expect it to be. Um, but who would I think would be the narrative spine of season 3? Like, okay, so who do I think already has done that? I think McGon's already had that. I think Connor's already had that. I think um, Blue Beetle obviously already had that. Um, Wally West is gone. Artemis, I think, gets sidelined. Like I think like her storyline was last season as well. Um, Nightwing is Nightwing, so I think he's too much for that to be the thing. There's already been Blue Beetle. I think the Infinity Inc. kids I think are off the table because they're not in Young Justice. Aqualad's off the table. Um, which I guess leaves like what are my options then? Like people that are still on the team. Like the only thing that comes to mind that like I think would happen would be like Beast Boy. But my
I'm so yeah, like I don't want to give away anything that I'm
no
going to
no
say, so I'm
I
not going
was
to confirm or deny.
yeah
But I
yeah.
just think that I'm so interested in your thought process going into that, like crossing everybody off the list, like because I don't know. I feel like if you were to ask me that question, I had to watch season 3. I could easily make an argument for, oh well, obviously it's going to be Arsenal, it's going to be Beast Boy, it's going to be Cassie, Wonder Girl. It's gonna be,
Mm.
like I feel like you could make an argument for kind of like any of these characters, but
What doesn't who exits in the denouement, right? Like they said that like somebody asked somebody like told somebody that they like there was that Batboy or not Batboy was that like Robin and Batgirl. Two people leave like the way that Artemis and Wally leave because of what happens to Wally. Like they gets mentioned offhand at the end of like the last episode. Um,
God, I don't remember.
but they exit to normal life because Wally dying like lets them know that I
Is it
think it's
Mal and Bumblebee?
that might be it. I don't. I'll go back and watch it
Okay.
again or something. Um, but yeah,
Yeah. I'm so excited now to watch season 3.
which will in a minimum happen in 3 weeks because you've got
Yeah,
uh
a million other things to
we
take
got
care of. Well,
movies.
speaking of a million other things to take care of, what have you been up to in your week?
So played some. So the big thing is I watched the Green Knight, the A24 Green Knight,
Oh,
uh,
sure.
which I enjoyed. I thought it was like kind of like a neat modern retelling of the classic story. It's like very kind of like close to the classic story in a lot of ways and doesn't really like it changes up some things, but it's very stylistic, which I thought was neat and different from a lot of the things I saw. But like I've seen this kind of like divisive on the internet. Like it got like it's one of those like high Rotten Tomatoes or high critic score, low audience score movies. I've seen people with much different takes, like even kind of like people that I like say follow on Twitter, right? And the biggest one for this one is my brother hated it. He thought it was like all style and no substance. Um,
Wow. Okay.
which like I get, but like I kind of appreciated that, I guess. But I guess you'd call it a polarizing film. Um, it was
Now I sort of want to see it more. I
yeah,
mean, I wanted to see it. I don't want to say a lot. minorly wanted to see it. I did want to see it.
I will say that I
Uh,
wanted to see it because it was like, like I thought like Arthurian Legend is neat, and like A24 is kind of like it's something that I will watch, and it won't be like any black, like it won't be like fucking Black Widow, right? Like it will be the anti Black Widow, which it fulfilled for me, right? Like, um, because I am kind of tired of blockbusters at this point. He says
okay.
going into James Gunn's is the Suicide
Yeah, James
Squad.
Gunn's Suicide Squad.
But
Hey, famously at like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Everybody
yeah, no, I mean,
is.
and I've seen many people call it his magnum opus, which maybe he like I really liked Thor Ragnarok, so like I like an auteurish, and I love Guardians of the Galaxy film, so an auteurish Suicide Squad might do it for me. The
I
one,
think rated R is all it needed. I think that
mm,
he is going to have so much license, to do the kind of shit that he never could pull off in a Guardians of the Galaxy movie because they're PG-13. That's the thing. That is the thing that makes me go like, I'm excited.
yeah,
I'm super excited.
and you don't hire James Gunn if you're not gonna like let him take control at some level, right? Like we've seen this
Yep.
happen before, where like I think it was like the first Ant-Man was supposed to be uh
Edgar Wright.
yeah, yeah, and then what was the other one that Han Solo was taken away from, was given to like what's his name,
Ron Howard
Ron Howard.
from Chris Lord and Phil Miller,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
Chris Miller and Phil Lord. I don't remember which one
Lord
it
and Miller.
was.
Yeah, just,
Yeah, Lord and Miller.
um,
Geniuses, as they say.
uh, but yeah, that would like, I think that like I am excited for that, but like Free Guy, right? Like which is the one that we're gonna see in 2 weeks, because like I like what's his name? I like Ryan Reynolds, but that seems like it's gonna be a very formulaic movie. Um,
Yeah, especially because I think it was Patrick Willems, who we've talked about on the podcast before. I think I gave him a derpy last year as like the best YouTube video essayist or whatever because of his quarantine talk show bit. He described Ryan Reynolds and The Rock as these two movie stars who are kind of their own genre of movie. Like Ryan Reynolds brings that Deadpool energy to any project he's in, and he kind of that's his whole shtick now, is being the kind of self-aware, wise guy who understands that he's in a movie at any given time. And I think a more negative part of me it would say I think that's bad. But a more positive part of me that is trying to give him the sort of the benefit of the doubt is this is a pretty good premise to kind of execute that in.
yeah,
I think really what I'm afraid of though, do you remember the movie Hancock?
yes, yeah, yeah.
The movie Hancock was sort of sold to me on this promise of being a superhero movie about like a drunk, irresponsible jackass sort of thing, right? And the movie has a lot of Hancock being an irresponsible jackass of a superhero, right? And how that's funny and it's engaging and it's compelling. But then it also like breaks down into this incredibly strange plot at the end about like gods and like angels. I think it's angels, not gods actually, where Hancock is actually an angel and that's why he has superpowers and like all this other sort of shit. And I'm sort of afraid that that's what's going to happen in Free Guy, because Free Guy seems like a fun and games movie. It is a movie that sets up a
Mm,
premise to have fun in games. The premise is you're an NPC in a video game and you are self-aware about it. Let's do all the fun and games, clever shit inside of that you can. But every fun and games movie has to end with some kind of climax or whatever, right? And some of them end well and some of them end poorly, and I think this one's trending towards poorly based on what I've seen. But we'll see. We'll see.
yeah.
We'll see.
So I think it was today. It was either today or yesterday. He on his YouTube channel released like a spot, which is one of the end movie characters is Dude, which is like literally Ryan Reynolds face CG'd onto some bodybuilder, and like like it shows a little clip of that, and then he talks about like how he worked out to get in shape for the role, but it's like literally just his face CG'd onto a bodybuilder or onto like a WWE star. It's like, um,
Okay.
it's funny. I felt kind of bad because like the whole bit is him like talking about like doing roids to get in shape, but looking up, it's like a WWE guy who's like a leukemia survivor, right? Like like
Oh.
if you
Oh my god. Yeah, I mean, and like I said, sometimes these movies work. They like Jumanji is an example of this, right? Like I thought that the Jumanji sequel that was like is that's probably the best video game movie, like movie about video games that has ever been made, in my opinion. And that movie is all fun and games up through and including the climax, right? Like it climaxes even, even through its fun and games. So I definitely think that this kind of thing is possible, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
I
Yeah.
also like Taiki Waititi, and he's like the villain. I'm looking it up
Mhm.
now. I'm just curious if he's the director as well, or if he's
There's no way he's the director. We would know if he's the director. He's like a name, but
right. IMDb's not cooperating with me. Apparently, there's a Venom trailer or a Carnage trailer.
I did
Um,
see the Carnage trailer. The Carnage trailer intrigues me more and more because it seems like they have done the interesting thing of not caring about the comics and instead caring about the previous movie, which I think is neat,
hmm,
just from an intellectual point of view, right? Like that their point of view was, oh, Venom was weirdly really successful, even though it kind of sucked, but was really entertaining at the same time. Let's just lean into how weird and entertaining Venom was, like all of the weird stuff that made the original Venom so entertaining, instead of worrying about continuity or any of these other like comic book shit.
hmm,
So yeah.
yeah. So the director is Sean Levy, who
Oh my god. Wait, I know him.
he was he is, what did he direct? He was a producer on Stranger Things. He also directed 8 episodes of Stranger Things. Uh, he also directed an episode of Kimmy Schmidt. Uh,
Yeah, I think
he
he's the
directed
Stranger
Real
Things
Steel.
guy. Oh my god, I loved that movie. Do you know that movie?
Yeah, that's the Rock'em Sock'em Robots movie, right?
Yeah, the Rock'em Sock. That movie is
I think I
so
saw it
good.
on a plane.
That movie is just. I mean, that movie is entirely just like Hugh Jackman, charismatic actor, like the movie. But
Maybe that's what makes maybe Free Guy is a spiritual successor, because like Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman have that like online internet rivalry.
oh my god, wait, they do?
Yeah, they have like a fake internet like beef. Usually it's between like Hugh Jackman's coffee company and Ryan Reynolds' gin company.
I've never heard of any of this,
Yeah,
but
no, I mean
okay.
this I got this I have mostly found out about because I'm subscribed to Ryan Reynolds'
Okay, I
YouTube
know
channel.
why I know this guy. He's the Night at the Museum guy.
Oh, is he
Those two.
really?
Do you remember these Night at the Museum movies? Where
Oh
like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. With fucking uh
Ben Stiller.
no, Ben's the one that always pops into my head because like I was shocked that I recognized him was Andy Griffith, right? It's
Oh really?
isn't he like the villain? Like no,
I
I
don't
don't.
remember.
Yeah, I mean,
I remember Owen Wilson is a cowboy. Robin Williams is Teddy Roosevelt.
the museum.
There's a couple of other people who are like people in that.
Yeah. Uh, no, it's Dick Van Dyke, not Andy Griffith.
Oh, Dick Van
Van
Dyke.
Dyke.
Okay.
Yeah. I got
Yeah,
my
because he's the evil janitor, right?
yeah,
I now remember this.
yeah, and yeah. That was basically kind of like a very much a what's the word a cameo movie. It felt like, or like
Sure. Yeah.
yeah. Um, but anyway, so yes, I watched The Green Knight. Um, and I played some WoW. I got my first flawless level 10 run on Torghast,
Hmm.
which was fun.
Was
Um,
it hard? How hard or easy do you find flawless?
so that level 10 run, it just like the powers I drew were the run powers I drew were just like very good for me. So
Sure.
that was easy. And right before we recorded this, I did a level 9 run. I wanted to try and pull I wanted to get the cosmetic. I was 2 anima short of having the cosmetic. So I was very frustrated. Um
Wait, which cosmetic? Like the shoulders?
or it's the back piece that's 1,000 anima once you ascend.
Oh, yeah, in the vaults. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't think about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
see, I should theoretically be doing that. So I'm doing these 12s, and the 12s are very clearly built for someone who is much better geared than I am. I did 112 by myself and got a ranking of 0 because I died 15 times or something. And like each death reduces your score by 40. So I had like negative 300 as my or whatever the number was, right? Negative 600, I guess. And so I could complete it, and I got the soul cinders, but it was not great.
Yeah,
But going into the adamant vaults I find to be very cool and fun. I like the adamant vaults a lot.
I do too. But yeah, like a couple weeks ago, I would say that level 10 was tough, and like that was my like push, my push goal. But now it's kind of like I was surprised that I got a flawless on it, but it was not hard. Um,
Yeah, I found that flawless is mostly up to those like bonus modifier things. So it's about doing the things like I always try and make sure I kill two elites right on top of each other because that's 10 points or something, right? Or there's one for stacking a bunch of the same Obleron armament. So there are some times where it's like, oh, I already have two haste ones. I'm going to take this three haste one because it gets me to five, and that's another 10 points or whatever. It's about like remembering those like knowledge breakpoints or whatever it's called.
yeah. And then like getting, and like I think a big part of it too is just like getting enough of the. I think the important upgrades in like the knowledge box are reduce the number of torments and increase the number of like bonuses and
Hmm.
like I don't know. I mean, for timing, like the pickup auto pickup one is insanely useful, but or it's more useful than I gave it credit for. I ended up taking it kind of late, but I'm also not like pushing hard to like max out my knowledge every week. Um,
Yeah, I think it's pretty impossible. I mean, not impossible. I think you could if you wanted to, but I did a pretty okay run at 12 and got 120 points. And I think I have like 700 like before I hit the cap or whatever. And
right, but
I
you
was
can
just like,
rerun to
holy
get more
shit.
knowledge.
No, sure. But I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I
I
like
haven't
like I
done
said,
that.
I ran another a 9 to try and like get the cosmetic, and I might run another 9 after this one just to like run through it. Also, so they fixed Touch of Death, which is fixed Touch of Death without patch notes, right? Like it's like they didn't want anybody like no one cares about Monk, I guess, because like it was like some people were talking about it, and then it like they fixed it, so and that makes Torghast run super easy, right? Like I get like one of two powers or two either no I get either two Touch of Death cooldown reductions or a all cooldowns reductions and a Touch of Death cooldown reduction, and I've got infinite Touch of Death, and that like makes running through the level fairly easy. And if I can stack even a little bit of health, then I can get through. Like there's like it is very infrequent where I don't have a state where like getting to the end is easy. It's just a matter of like you said, like getting the point things to line up
Yeah.
to hit the adamant vaults.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what's so clever about Torghast or like the Torghast changes is they, before the game design linked everything into can you beat the boss, right? Your progression and all this other stuff. Whereas now they've segmented out rewards where it's like, okay, the adamant vaults, which includes gem sockets sometimes, it includes conduits sometimes, right? That's top tier, right? I can't believe there's siren in the background. I'm sorry about that. Then there's progression, right? You get a 4 and you can go to the next level. And then the baseline, just complete the dungeon, is how you get Soul Ash and Soul Cinders. And it's just like the freest shit.
Yeah. Um. The only other thing I think of note that I did this because I played a little bit of it's called the Ascent or Ascend, I forget which. It's part of Microsoft Game Pass, which is why I checked it out. It's like a twin stick cyberpunk shooter. Um, it's not quite twin stick, but it's like an action RPG. The problem is that it doesn't really have loot, and so it didn't really draw me in. I think it's pretty
Mm-hmm.
good for what it is, and if you like that style of gameplay, um, for what it is, I think you might have a good time with it. I just kind of like it just didn't click with me mostly because like the like there's not a lot of loot there. It's kind of like you get like one of each thing and then you upgrade them is what it seems like. Didn't play a ton of it yet, but it didn't click with me. But other people have said good things about it. It's a competent game. It's got a little bit of like Eurojank to it, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Like just kind of like a nice feeling. But you know, otherwise it's a game. What have you done with your week?
So the first thing that I did is I went and I saw F9 finally, which I honestly feel bad that I did not do sooner because like I loved every fucking second of this movie and it's just It's made for these movies are made for me. These Fast and Furious movies because they are simultaneously so ridiculous and also so sincere. Like this is another. I'm sort of copying this from Patrick H. Willis. Something that he talks about is how the friction there was friction growing in the Fast and Furious franchise, specifically in the Fate of the Furious, because Vin Diesel and The Rock have these incredibly different sort of like tones. Where The Rock is very like winking and he's like, "Hey, I'm a movie star and I look like I look like a cartoon." And but if you just grab a bag of popcorn, I'm going to show you a good time, right? Whereas Vin Diesel is treating the Fast and the Furious franchise like it's fucking Lawrence of Arabia, like it is Shakespeare, like it is, uh, uh like like he thinks he's going to win a fucking Oscar, you know, talking about family or whatever. And like the sincerity that comes with that is part of the juice. That's part of the secret Fast and Furious juice. Just to like hammer this point home. I wrote a tweet. I came out of that movie at midnight and I wrote a series of tweets, which was a comprehensive list of the 7 times I cried watching F9. Number one, realizing that Dom named his kid after Paul Walker's character Brian right at the start. Number two, when Han shot the 3 guys chasing Letty and Mia in Tokyo because Han was famously killed at the end of Tokyo Drift and has been dead in the lore for like the last 2 movies and got brought back. We know this from the trailers. This isn't much of a spoiler. Got brought back in F9 because Justin Lin loves me. Number three, when Mia showed up at the base to help track down Jacob and said that Brian is with Brian because Brian is the name of Paul Walker's character and it is also the name of Dom's in-universe son who he named after Paul Walker's character. And they constantly are telling you that even though the real Paul Walker is dead, his character in the Fast and the Furious franchise is living his best life, caring for his family. Number four, when Han showed up at the base and hugged the whole crew, especially Dom. Number five, when Jacob comes back at the end to help Dom take down the bad guy and they work together to flip the truck with their magnets and Dom saves Jacob's life and they're so in sync even though they hate each other. Number six, when Han shows up at the family barbecue at the end of the movie and hugs the characters from Tokyo Drift who have not shown up in a Fast and Furious movie until F9. And then number seven, when Dom asks little Brian if he's ready to say grace at the family barbecue. The family barbecue is very important in Fast and Furious lore. And it's so good. It's just so good. It hits me where I live. It's about family. I just love these movies so fucking much. And I cannot possibly express how perfect they are for my weird blend of like over the top ridiculous action and also like dead serious gravitas sincerity.
You know,
There you
I
go.
yeah, no, I tell myself I'm gonna rewatch or I'm gonna watch them every time, but I never get around to it.
We
Uh,
watched Tokyo Drift as part of the, so like for Akupar games we do like movie night every 2 weeks, and the most recent one I put up a poll which was all of the Fast and Furious movies, and somehow the 2 breakaway contenders were the very first Fast and Furious and Tokyo Drift, and Tokyo Drift like barely won, which was nice because Tokyo Drift is fucking amazing. It's like Tokyo Drift is like secretly one of the best Fast and Furious movies, if I'm being honest. Just because like it really is where the whole franchise finds its feet, I guess. But anyway, besides that, I played a bunch of WoW, which was sort of nondescript. I don't really think I did anything like all that interesting. Did I tell you I already got KSM?
oh no, you didn't. I didn't realize
Yeah, we
that.
got KSM in week 2 of of Shadowlands, which was really interesting, and I'm interested by it because we knew the dungeons so well. Like so much of it was just understanding the dungeons on a deep level, and going through the dungeons, with 226 gear, you're much better set up to perform even in a new patch where everything gets super buffed, right? Because the dungeons all scale up with all of the new item levels. Um, that stuff just didn't matter as much just because we had a real mastery of the dungeon, and We had really good gear. Also, Arms Warrior is like got really buffed and is like one of the top DPS specs right now. Famously, the Race to World First ended with Echo stealing the title from Limit because they ran 3 Arms Warriors, whereas Limit only ran 2 Arms Warriors, which was interesting.
Okay. Rats, I guess.
Do you care about the Race to World First at
No,
all?
not at all.
I
Not-
yeah, the Race to World First I find absolutely fascinating because it like dominated Twitch for for a whole week, and where just 500,000 people are descending on watching these WoW guilds pull the same boss over and over and over again. And it's like an esports event. It has casters. It has like all of these graphics on screen. It has like pro players, right? Like Limit, Echo, BD. I don't remember what BDGG is called. Pieces. There's a bunch of different guilds. They all have their you know they all have like a bunch of players or whatever. It's like this whole esports scene, and it triggers once every 6 months. It's like imagine your whole job is 1 week out of every 6 months. What a world. But I don't know. This Race to World First was hype as fuck actually, because um there's certain bosses that are reset bosses where you can't get the final boss of the raid down until the next reset, right? Where you can refarm mythic and heroic and get gear again, and then you go and you face Sylvanas with like 6 more item levels and you just thrash, right? um this one though, it became pretty clear that Sylvanas was killable in the first reset, and Limit and Echo were both making pulls on Sunday night or Monday night before the reset, where it was just like, can one of them get it? Can one of them get it done? And it ended up being Echo. The Limit went to bed. Um, and Limit Max, who is the raid leader, who's kind of like the coach, I guess, of the team. He did like an AMA stream afterwards, and one of the things he said, he was like, honestly, like, it's heartbreaking because like we all knew that boss was killable. We could have killed Sylvanas. But the thing is, we had been raiding for 6.5 hours, and we were 2.5 hours over the scheduled end of our raid, and we were just putting in pulls, and you realize the fire's gone. Like, people are too tired. They don't have the energy. They're not playing defensively. They're, they're making kind of these dumb mistakes, and you just sort of lose the endurance battle, and that's like heartbreaking, and you never see that kind of shit in esports, which I thought was, I don't know, I thought that was compelling as fuck.
yeah, I mean,
But it was also about to be drams as fuck, because if Echo had failed to kill Sylvanas inside of the reset, then it would have automatically been North America's, basically, because the reset is 16 hours apart between NA and EU.
okay.
So like NA would have gotten up, they would have they would have re-cleared, they would have just immediately killed Sylvanas before EU even got a single reset. So everybody was really afraid of that, because it's like a big thing that people are mad at Blizzard about when it comes to the race of world first.
That's interesting because it sounds like, even though it's like taken very seriously, it's not like it's people, like in let's say League of Legends, right? Like, those people are LoL players and that's what they do, right? It sounds like, it's
Yep.
like they've done their 4 hours of raiding. Well, it sounds like that they're like normal people that do this, but it's not like their whole thing. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and it's also a community thing, right? This is not run by Blizzard. There's no Blizzard person like, it's not like I could go to twitch.tv/warcraft or whatever and watch Race of World First coverage, right? Like, this is all built on the community, and I actually think that that's good, to be honest. Like, no shade on Blizzard, but I think it's cool that this is a community event that is not sort of directly touched and handled the way that Hearthstone Esports, Overwatch League, LCS, CS:GO, like all of these other leagues have developers who have their fingers very deep in that pie. And I think it's neat that the Race to World First is entirely different than that, right? And is kind of unrelated to like the dev team, outside of everybody in the dev team is paying attention, obviously, to the race, but they're not like directly involved. Nobody's cutting a paycheck because of the Race to World First or whatever. Which sometimes leads to friction, right? Like, one of the things that made this race pretty interesting was the dev team was hot fixing bugs in the fights, right? Like they were watching the streams, they were realizing that there were bugs on the bosses, and they were hot fixing the bugs, even as the raids were trying to take advantage of the bugs in order to progress, right? And the rule, and this is nothing new, right? But the rule has always been that if one team kills the boss with a bug in it, right? They won't hotfix that bug until 2 or 3 weeks later, right? Just to kind of like keep it fair, which is maybe the only like official policy. And it's not even official. That's just us reading the tea leaves of seeing what Blizzard has done in the past about it, right? Um, and that happened with Kel'Thuzad because they cheesed a mechanic in Kel'Thuzad by killing a character over and over again on a mechanic, and using shit to bring him back to life with like trinkets and shit like that. And it's legitimately clever, to be honest with you. I think it was pretty. I kind of think it was an exploit, if I'm being honest, and I'm pretty sure that's going to go away. They're going to patch that out or whatever. But it pretty clearly they killed that boss because of that exploit and or that bug. And I don't know. So yeah, that's the race the world first. It was Drams.
Yeah, no, I'm. That's interesting. So, but like everybody like, there's like no chance that like, say like some guild that no one's ever heard of will like be at Sylvanas and start streaming and be like, hey, we managed to like beat out. Um,
Yeah, there's really no chance of that. There actually are chances of upsets. So for instance, there was the world first heroic went to a Chinese guild, kind of out of nowhere, to be honest, who just they just cleared the heroic raid basically instantaneously, and they were really gunning it and they were really speed running it. Whereas Complexity and Echo were, they do these things called splits, where what they do is they take their whole raid, they divide them up into groups. So you'll have like two warriors, a bunch of holy paladins, and a bunch of plate DPS, and they'll go through heroic, and then you'll have a like 15 of the characters feed gear to five of the characters, right? To try and like stack up as much stuff on individual characters as much as they can. The Chinese guild didn't do this. They went in as one unit and they just blitzed heroic because they weren't interested in like setting up gear, because the advantage of a split is that you can get gear from multiple
yeah,
lockouts,
right.
right? Like I can get gear from 4 different lockouts if I know that 60 of these guys aren't raiding, only 20 of them are, and we filter all of that gear to the 20 raiders, right? Um, but uh, but yeah, I mean the race of world first is always the long haul of who can do mythic, and it's specifically who can do mythic while like incredibly under geared, right? Um, that is what makes it so like
Compelling.
prestigious, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I mean, like the Sylvanas wipes were like less than a percent in her health bar, right? As she was going into enrage, and her enrage is not all that terrible. What it does is she just like she's putting gunk on the ground, and eventually the room just fills with gunk, right? And you have nowhere to stand but in the gunk, and the gunk is doing damage, and eventually that will wipe the raid. You can't heal through it, right? That's essentially the enrage for Sylvanas, and every kill, every attempt, that was like going really deep on Sylvanas was going into like, it's like 45. She like dies at 45% or whatever. It's like 45.43% or whatever, and it's like, yes, 0.4% away from killing Sylvanas, but we were like in the gunk and we didn't get enough in the burn phase and this and that or whatever. And I don't know, it's just neat. That's the race the world first for you.
sounds neat. Sounds like something that like the community thing is interesting to me just because like that's also how a lot of the FGC operates, right? Like
Yeah.
well, that's become less true. Sony bought Evo, and Capcom runs the Capcom Pro Tour. But
I actually think it has a lot in common with speedrunning. I think if you were to really look at the DNA of the
that
race of
makes
world
sense.
first, it's functionally like a GDQ in a lot of ways.
That makes sense. Although I assume that like the not nearly as many exploits. Um,
Hmm.
um, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's be running its own thing. But yeah. You have anything else you want to talk about before we jet out of here?
The one big thing is Grime came out today. I've been talking about Grime. I have actually been up since 6 a.m. because that's when Grime went live. We interviewed the devs on stream, which was very cool. We talked to them. I then streamed a bunch of Grime, which was nice. I killed the second boss, and I'm in the third area, but I haven't progressed much farther than that. I'm probably streaming more grime on Friday to continue. Buddy gets good grime, and I'll probably be continuing this for the next couple of weeks because everybody fucking loves this game. It's the top of new and trending. A ton of big streamers. So Slootbag, who is is one of these like Race the World first streamers. He was streaming Grime today, which was really cool to see. I was like, oh fuck, like um, there's I don't know. I'm very excited. This game is great, and it's out. So yeah,
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I have it bought and downloaded, and after I maybe like finish the last things I have to do for the WoW reset, I'll jump into it myself.
very
It's
cool.
real,
Well,
real
I
cool.
wish you the best of luck. If you run into any bugs, I'm your guy.
Yeah. Oh yes, we've done this before, right? Like I'll like
Yeah,
I think
that this happened on Spinch. Yeah,
yeah
I've
yeah yeah.
reported a bunch of your bugs on Spinch. Yeah, Spinch was, uh, Spinch I think was a little bit of a buggier game on launch. There are two big issues with Grime that seem to be related to like there's weird stuff with inputs where certain inputs aren't working correctly, and there's weird stuff with FPS drops that we haven't been able to figure out, but we're looking into it now. Those are the only two like launch issues that we've
Does it
identified so
have
far.
controller support?
Yeah, I
Okay.
would recommend playing it on controller.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
say because like inputs, you know me. Like if the inputs don't work, I'm furious. But if I can use a
Yeah,
controller,
so
the sides of
so
that.
the inputs generally work. It's just there's weirdness with so the thing that I ran into today, I'm referencing a bug I ran into in my stream today where I couldn't there's dialogue where you can talk to like an NPC and then the NPC gives you things. I couldn't select down, which was there's an easy workaround. I just hit S on my keyboard, right? And it'll sort through the menu. But it's just stuff like that, right? Like low level, weird inputs not being picked up correctly. That's an artifact of it being on an Xbox One controller, we're pretty sure. And there's other weird stuff with PS5 controllers, like the different controllers all having their own kind of architecture or whatever. So anyway, we're figuring that stuff out. If anybody runs into any bugs, feel free, email me, buddy at aquapowergames.com. I'm happy to help, or go to the Steam forums or the Discord or any of these other million places that I'm keeping track of to,
So
funnel our bugs.
can I play this game with a fight stick?
That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe.
You need the right stick for
Honestly, it
anything?
might be good for it, right?
Do you need the right stick for anything?
Oh, you do. Actually, now that I think about it, you would need the right stick.
Okay, then you can't.
Yeah.
That's usually the big one. Um, and I would
You
just
could play the first two levels without with a fight stick, because the right stick isn't something that activates until you kill the second boss.
okay. Well, I look forward to finding out what that is. But with that, I will say if you'd like to email us about any of the things we talked about in this episode, from Young Justice Season 2 to Fast 9 to Grime, email us at subversiveplaygames@gmail.com or podcast@subversiveplaygames.com. Also, twitch.tv/subversiveplaygames, where these episodes go live, and Buddy can screw up the spoiler warnings. But what else? YouTube, podcast places, give us reviews, send us emails, whatever. Maybe we're like fast approaching. We're like 2 months out from like I guess it's like what episode are we on? It'll be the 6th year, and that approximately lines up with the episode 300. Oh, we still got like 20-ish episodes, so that's like 4 months, I guess, at this point.
I think we've been more liberal with skipping episodes recently.
Yeah,
We used to be very clockwork about week on,
yeah.
whereas recently we've been pretty okay taking a week off and doing other stuff.
Yeah, not only that, but there's also like 52 weeks in a year. Oh, I guess that should
Yeah, that's
play in
true.
our favor, which would make 300 early, but it's definitely not going to be early this year. What we've got, like,
Yeah, like normally I think it comes around in October, right?
yeah,
I feel
yeah,
like the
the
last
anniversary
couple
is
of ones
late
was like,
October or mid to late
yeah.
October. So, um, actually, we're kind of on pace to hit that, right? Like we've got like 16. So this is 284, and so episode 300 will be 16 episodes from now, which is 4 months.
4 months from now, that'll be December, so
Oh,
we're kind of 2 months a little bit behind.
this
That's
is
not crazy.
no, August, September, October is 12 months, so November, end of
Oh, and then
November.
November. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
I was thinking end of August
yeah,
to December.
yeah.
So yeah, you're right.
And we'll probably get this is probably a 5-episode August, right? Because it's the first, so right, we'll get the first, the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. So yeah, it'll be a 5-episode August. Yes, figure it out. So you've got 3 months to come up with questions, audience. Send And you can send us questions whenever as well, but it's
Yep.
not like enough of you watch.
That's true. It's not like we would not answer them.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to say until next time, your listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.